Hi guys, and welcome to Total Technik. Today we're all about Brembo brakes, and what we're going to do in this video is we're going to be showing you how to do the full brake bleed process for all four corners, so for the entire car. And you'll notice of course that Brembo brakes have two bleed valves, one inner and one outer, which makes it a little bit more complicated, but it's still not too bad. So let's get this job done. So when looking to bleed the brake system manually using the brake pedal, which is what we're going to be doing in this video, it's kind of the easiest, most traditional way if you like. One very important factor is when you're pressing that brake pedal down, it's obviously going to be pushing the brake fluid through the system and out of the bleed nipple on the top. And it's very important as you're working around the car and keeping an eye on whichever caliper it is you're working on at that time, that the brake fluid reservoir, which on this particular car is hidden under this little flap here, just by the back of the bulkhead here, that this never ever runs dry. So you've got to keep an eye on this as you go around the car. If you're swapping from caliper to caliper, stop, come and have a look, and if you need to, put a bit more fluid in the top of this. You never want this to run dry, because what will happen is if that brake fluid runs out and you squeeze it all through the caliper that you're working on, then this will actually start to suck air into the system, and then you're going to get into a whole heap of trouble that you really don't want to be in, and is completely avoidable. So that's the biggest tip I can give you really, is keep an eye on the level as you go around the car working on your caliper. Never ever let that run dry. Don't let that suck air into the system. So now, before you take the top off your brake fluid reservoir there, you always want to give it a good clean. Now right in front of it here, you can see I've got lots of dust, etc. So I'm going to give all this a good clean off, and then I'm going to clean the top of the brake fluid cylinder, give that a really good clean. The reason being is when you take the lid of this off, you don't want any particles, any of these little bits of leaves and debris getting into your brake fluid or your brake system. So once you've got him cleaned up and you're happy with it, what you're going to do next is pop the lid off and just double check the level. And if your level's not on maximum, because we're doing a bleed, now's a good time to top it up to maximum, because obviously you know that level's definitely going to drop as you draw the fluid through the system. And just a quick note for reference, typically on an Audi or VW, the whole system will take around 1 litre to 1¼ litres. So you're looking about 0.25 to 0.3 of a litre per caliper. So with regards to your brake fluid, all kind of modern Audi and VW vehicles, they all use a standard .4. You can ignore the brand and go with whatever brand you like, but it needs to be to a .4 specification, which is one of the most common brake fluids there is anyway, so you won't have any problems finding that. And when you finish using it, especially if you've got quite a large container, you must make sure that you seal it again. So put the lid on properly, nice and tight, because brake fluid actually draws moisture in from the air, and once you've got moisture into your brake fluid, it seriously affects the performance of the brake fluid to such an extent that you might not be able to use it, depending on how much water it's drawn in. So always make sure that you reseal the container at the end of the job. So when you top your brake fluid up, pour it in slowly, just in case you get an airlock in there. You don't want it pumping out over the top. Just a little bit at a time. Let it go down, so you'll find it'll come up and then kind of drop back down again. Just keep doing that until you're around the max level on the side of the reservoir. So when it comes to working on these Brembo style brake calipers, these actually have two brake nipples or bleed valves. There's one here on the front, the outer one, and there's one exactly the same just on the rear, just here. That's the inner one. Now you actually need to bleed both of these, and you usually start with the outer one, bleed that one first, and then move back to the inner one. So when it comes to bleeding the brakes on your vehicle, it's very important that you start in the correct corner and work through in the right order. So what you want to do is take a look under your bonnet or under your hood and find where the master cylinder is for your brake, and it's normally under the brake fluid reservoir, so it's quite easy to spot. And for your reference, all the references to left and right that I'll be making in this video will be as if you were sat in the car looking outwards. So on this particular car, when you look under the bonnet, the brake fluid reservoir and master cylinder is located on the left of the vehicle. And so what you want to do is you want to start with the caliper that's physically the furthest away from your master cylinder. So obviously it's at the front of the vehicle on the left hand side, so I've actually come to the back of the vehicle and I'm working on the right hand side first of all. And then obviously your second furthest away would be the other rear caliper, which would be the rear left caliper. And then we'd move to the front right caliper, because again that's going to be the furthest away from that corner, and then finally going back in to the front left caliper, because that's in the same corner that our master cylinder is. So that's the important thing to realise. Just make sure you go around in the correct order, starting furthest away, second furthest, third furthest, and then obviously ending with your closest. Now we're going to be demonstrating this for you on one corner. As I said, we're starting on the one that's furthest away, so we're starting on the rear right on this particular vehicle. We will be doing all four calipers, but the process is identical for all four, so we don't need to show you all four. We're going to show you this one, and then obviously we've just explained the order that you go in. So once you've done one, you just go around and repeat the exact same process on the other three. So I'll give you a full demonstration on this caliper. To help us do that, we're going to be using this little DIY little brake bleed bottle that we've made up. Actually making a video on how to make one of these. You can buy one of these for about £10, the proper version of these, 10 to £15, $10 to $15, somewhere in that kind of price range. But you really don't need to spend that. You know, all you need is, the only thing that's going to cost you anything is the tubing, and you'll get that for £1 or £2, a couple of dollars. And then obviously this is just an empty pop bottle. This is a very useful tool for catching the brake fluid. And before you start, you'll notice we've actually got a bit of brand new brake fluid in the bottom there. The reason being is when we first open up the valve, the bleed nipple there, it might try and draw air back up. And what we don't want to do is for it to suck any air back up. So if you put a little bit of brake fluid at the bottom there, then as it draws up, instead of drawing air up, it will draw up a little bit of brake fluid. It will likely never ever get to the caliper, but this is just in case. This is kind of the typical procedure. So the basic way that this process is going to work, we're going to be doing it the old-fashioned traditional method of manually pressing down the brake pedal. So you don't need any kind of extra kit. You will need a second person, ideally, to help you out. A couple of very important things to point out is obviously at the top here, we mentioned before, we've got the two bleed valves, or the bleed nipples. And so what we need to do is connect our tubing to here, because when we put pressure on that brake pedal, it's going to be pumping the fluid out of here. So we need to open these up, and what we'll do is we'll open that up with a spanner. The second person will be pressing that brake pedal down. It will push the any air that you might have in the system, and the old fluid will start to flow through. Now the full system on a vehicle such as this will typically take between 1 and 1 1/4 litres, so it's not as much as you think. So again, because we've got that nice transparent bottle, we want to make sure we're bringing about 1/3 of a litre through each caliper. So by the time we've gone through that whole process, we would have got to our 1 1/4 litres. All that old fluid should be completely flushed through the system. One really important thing before we jump in and do this, if you've got that second person helping you, pressing the brake pedal down, please make sure that they understand that what they shouldn't do is just hop in the car and push that brake fluid right down, that brake pedal all the way down to the floor. Normally, obviously, your brake pedal has resistance, and so you press the brake pedal down, you can feel that it's quite firm. Once you've opened up one of these valves, then of course the pressure is free to flow through, because there's nothing stopping it, because it will push fluid out. And so, theoretically, you can push that pedal right down to the floor, but you don't want to do that. There's a technical reason why. Basically, the piston in the master cylinder over kind of with age, really, it kind of gets a little build up of kind of scum around the end of it. and which is never really a problem because you're always pushing the brake pedal in this manner, and so that piston's always travelling backwards and forwards a certain amount. But then if you suddenly go in and you press that all the way down and that piston goes all the way through, you could crumble that stuff off and it's going to get into your brake fluid, and you really don't want that. So just remember, your brake pedal never in real life goes down all the way down to the floor, so that's what you want to be repeating here. So you want to be pressing it about halfway down at most, and just nice, slow, firm strokes. And so what the person will do is they'll put a bit of pressure on it, and once you need to communicate with that second person, and once they're putting that pressure on it, you open the valve and they'll gently keep those pumps going, and you're starting to draw the fluid through. And then when you come to shut it off, very, very important, make sure that you ask them to give one final push on the pedal, and as they're pushing the pedal, then you lock this back off, you close this valve back off. The reason being is between those pumps, what you'll see is the fluid gets pushed out and it kind of slowly draws back in. And so if you do it when it's slowly drawing back in, if there were any air or any contaminants in there, etc., then you'd be letting them back in. So always try and close it off when it's in the middle of pushing out of that valve there. And the other very important thing that we mentioned earlier in the video, and don't forget this, as you're doing this, remember you're drawing all this nice, all this fluid through, and you're putting the nice fresh fluid in under your bonnet or under your hood there. You cannot let that brake fluid reservoir run dry. So you need to keep an eye on that as you go around the car and do this process, but do not forget that, because you don't want to draw air into your system. So first things we need to do is just get the little protective cap off of the bleed valves. So we'll go ahead and get ourselves set up here. We actually have this little handle just here, and we can use that. You can just attach it onto anywhere where you can hang this bottle conveniently. Like so, make sure at the bottom of the bottle that the pipe is pushed all the way down so that it will draw up fluid rather than air. Then attach the end of the cable onto the brake nipple. Like I said, we're going to do the outside one first. Remember, we're going to be drawing about a third of a litre through, and obviously you've got to divide that between the two. But you can keep an eye on your little transparent bottle here. You can keep an eye on that. So remember, you want to bring a third of a litre through into this bottle per caliper, and so you want to do about half of that per bleed nipple, if that makes any sense. Just a quick tip for you: if you find that the bleed valve is in there really tight, which they can be, especially with these Brembo type ones, rather than using the brake spanner, which is kind of, you guys can see that, open on one end. What you can do is you can just get a standard socket and your wrench and try and crack it off that way. Because then you're definitely getting a good grip on all 6 sides. You don't want to use a 12 pointed one, you want to use a 6 pointed one, or if you've got it, see this one actually grips the way you can see it's got curves, and actually grips the sides rather than the corners. And I'd link for you for these on Amazon. Actually, it's a really nice little nice tool to have. But they can be quite useful. But if it is stubborn, then kind of get a normal socket on it rather than a spanner. Okay, start to pump, please. You see the brake fluid is now starting to come through. And as this brake fluid continues to come through, obviously your bottle will be slowly filling up at the bottom there. So you want to keep this process going until you've got, well, we're going to be doing about a third of a litre, aren't we? So about half of 1/3, so 0.15 of a litre approximately in the bottom of that bottle. And then when you come to a point where you're ready, get your spanner back on there, ready to tighten it, and then get the person to give it one last pump. Let me know when. There, and lock it off in the middle of the pump just there. So now what we want to do is swap the pipe over to the inner one and do exactly the same process again. So because we've drawn the fluid through on this side, we're now connected up to the rear to do that exact same process. Before we do that, so we want to shoot over, lift up the bonnet of the car and have a look at the brake fluid level and top that up. So obviously we have used a fair amount being drawn through into our bottle, so now we want to replace that on the other end. We do not want that to run dry. Okay, start the pump for me. Okay, here it comes. One last one. Got it. As I'm a bit concerned about cornering mine off, rounding mine off, because they are a little bit old. Again, I'm back to using the spanner. They shouldn't need much to do these up. These are only about 14 Newton meters. Just kind of got to make sure they're nice and snug, and then to keep an eye out for any potential leaks when you come back and you do a quick brake test at the end of this process. So finally, remove your hose. Ensure that your bleed valves are tightened up sufficiently, you're happy with them. And then at that stage, I recommend getting a bit of blue cloth, giving them a really good clean off all the way around them, get it as dry as you can, and leave the caps off for the time being. The reason being is obviously we're going to go and repeat this process now on the other 3 calipers on the car, and so we're going to be pumping that brake paddle a lot. So if these aren't quite tight enough, these will show a leak. So as long as we get them nice and dry at this stage, and when we come back and we look at these again at the end of the process, then these should be nice and bone dry just as we left them. So what we don't want to leave on is any kind of old drip. So when we come back and we go, was that a new drip or is that an old one? I don't know. Get it nice and dry now, both inner and outer, dry as you can, and then when we double check it at the end before you put your cap on, you can have a look, make sure that there's no new leaks, and then once you're happy at the end of the process, cap back on, job done. Okay, so we've now been all the way around the car and we've done all 8 of the bleed valves. So now what we want to do is inspect them to make sure that they're all done up properly and we don't have any leaks. So if you can get the person who sat in the car to put some pressure on the brake pedal for me. And then what you're looking for, as they keep that pressure on that, is if any fluid starts to appear from the tip of it. If it doesn't, as we can see here, you're absolutely fine. Likewise, worth looking around the bottom of it as well, the seat, just to make sure that there's nothing there. So that one I'm 100% happy with. So I'm going to put the cap on that one and finish that one, and then obviously I'm going to go around and check all 8 of these whilst that pressure is kept on that brake pedal. So now all the calipers are successfully bled. What you want to do is top your fluid up to your max level. So that's the brake job completed. Obviously you need to put your wheels back on and make sure you torque up the wheel nuts to the correct spec. But before you get on your car, before you hop in your car and shoot down the motorway at 70 miles an hour, what you should do is test those brakes, and you should do that just on the driveway outside your own house. Just roll backwards and forwards a few times, make sure those brakes that feel good, make sure they're pinching as they should, they feel correct, and then take it on a little short drive just around the block, again just testing those brakes, keeping an eye on them, making sure you're 100% happy before you go shooting down the highway or the motorway at full speed. If this video has been helpful for you, we always ask, please do us a favour in return. At the very least, be sure to hit that like button. If you could hit subscribe, it really does help out our channel. We have hundreds more Audi DIY videos waiting for you on our YouTube channel and also on our website, totaltechnik.com. Please be sure to take a look at those. Thank you once again. We'll see you again.